if you've got a business that's doing okay, don't be seduced into growth. There is nothing wrong with having one business that pays the bills, gives you a comfortable lifestyle, you get a few holidays, the kids get what they want. There is nothing wrong with that. Yet society, we get caught up in this seduction of growth, bigger, better. Let's go national, let's go international. And there's not enough people speaking about this. I'm glad you mentioned this, Saf, because there is nothing wrong with having a little business that pays the bills and everyone is reasonably happy. And that is the way a lot of our elders, they created their business. They had a little corner shop, they had a little takeaway, a little restaurant. They had one little business and they made that work for them.
Yeah, sometimes they call them lifestyle businesses now, but effectively you're talking about a small business. You just run that, and it's like rather than having it's like one of these. Having a small basket, but keeping it close to you, as opposed to putting your eggs in many baskets to a certain level. So, what's the mindset of somebody looking to franchise or become a franchisor? We'll stick to franchising at the moment, as opposed to franchisees. So, why would somebody do that? So, is it about scalability?
Yeah, for me, it's about
domination.
Domination, growth. I think it's about growth. We want to take the Boss Pizza brand and we want to grow it as much as possible. So franchising is probably one of the easiest routes to achieve that goal.
Okay. So there's a book that I was reading, and I'm still reading, by Patrick Bet-David, which says, "Choose your enemy wisely." And you've named your competitor. You've named specifically Domino's. So talk to us about why you pitching with Domino's specifically them? Is it because they're the best at the moment?
Yeah, they're the industry leader. The pizza market's a £2.9 billion market, and they are the key players in that space. You've got Papa John's seem to be in decline. They're closing a number of stores, quite a lot of stores. Pizza Hut Delivery are closing a number of stores. Those two brands are struggling. Domino's is starting to steal more and more of the market share. And I think there is real space in this market for a new challenger brand. And that's where I see Boss Pizza coming in.
So very similar to the banking industry and so forth, which is sort of fragmented a little bit to a certain level. You think, there's room for a new brand coming in.
There's always room for a new brand to come in.
Okay. So let's put the hat off a franchisee.
Okay.
And the sort of skill sets of a franchisee, and you talked about mindset of why somebody would go down the route of becoming a franchisee. Usually, it's about money. It's about it's maybe lifestyle, but people know that they've got to work hard. It's not really it's not even a 9 to 5. They've got to work hard. So, what's the assurity to a certain level in terms of setting up and working with a franchisor?
Well, I've worked with franchisees who have multiple stores for the same brand.
Okay.
And I've worked with franchisees who have the business is run by, let's just say, one of their children.
Okay.
And is funded, and the capital is provided by the parents.
Bank of Mom and Dad,
Yeah, so it's a case of trying to keep something in the family and to provide opportunities for more members of the family. You see, it can become a family-run business, but using and borrowing and piggybacking off another brand. So essentially, they're still running their own business. There are limitations in what they can and can't do. For example, when it comes to branding and how marketing material might look like, the products and the ingredients that they might be using, there will be very prescriptive in that way. Okay. But you'll have some people who have multiple branches for the same brand, some people who have a singular one for the same brand. How they operate will often depend on their mindset, whether they choose to run it as their own business or almost like a temp comes in just to earn a bit of cash.
Is a franchisee entrepreneurial? Both to any one of you.
Well, what is an entrepreneur?
An entrepreneurial mindset.
What is an entrepreneur is the question, isn't it? Is an entrepreneur somebody who just takes the risk without having a fixed income? Or is an entrepreneur who has multiple pots of risks that they're, because this is open to debate. What do you class as an entrepreneur? Okay. But in either case...
If we were to take the risk out of the equation, entrepreneurs are innovative. They come up with ideas. They're always creating things. It's a creator. So let's leave risk
By
aside.
whose definition?
So from it's a conversation. So
Okay.
we haven't got the Collins dictionary yet. So when you think about entrepreneurs, you think about creativity, you think about ideas, innovation. That aspect of it. So is a franchisee an entrepreneur based on that?
Could be.
Could
yeah,
be.
it could be. Yeah, because look, even though you may not have had input into the actual product design and stuff and the innovation, as you put it, you're still going to have to make money from that business. You're going to have to think of ways of bringing footfall into the business. So while some of the marketing may be prescriptive again or might be done for you, you're going to have to attract people to come into the business. You're still going to have to think of ways of retaining your staff. You've got staff there. How are you going to get on with your staff? How are you going to talk to them? How are you going to be treating them? How are you going to retain them? Are they actually going to go above and beyond for you? That's a part of being an entrepreneur from that element.
You say that's more leadership.
I think that overlaps into it.
Yeah.
I'd say leadership overlaps into it. Management overlaps into it. But as an entrepreneur, some entrepreneurs don't work with people. They just have digital products that they could be selling. They're not directly working with people. They're indirectly working with people, which are their customers. So it's
Going back to the Ashuri thing, I think mom and pop, you've got two types. You've got mom and pop businesses, and there's nothing wrong with that. Franchisees, they maybe take on one franchisee, they earn a decent profit, they earn the majority of the wages, they buy themselves effectively a semi-decent lifestyle, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then the second type of people we've got are multi-site operators. They want to own 5, 6, 7, 10 units, and they make it work for them. So I think it could work. It just depends very much on the individual. And you touched on something very interesting there. Entrepreneurship, I think it's over glorified, if that's even a word. Over glorified, is that even a word?
Yeah,
I think it's bigged up far too much. Most people are on social media, and the only thing they see as entrepreneurship is sexy. It is far from that. Most people, they would die if they actually realised how much work goes on into creating a successful business.
It's sold as being sexy. I remember back in the day when I had after I graduated, I did law as well. Before when I had to do my LPC, I thought I'd earn the money for the LPC rather than fork out 10 grand, and because I didn't have the financial backing to do that. And I landed myself in a door-to-door sales job, commission only. That's where my sales journey began. And they used to prep us. They used to think of the negatives we'll not only get on the doors, but from the family and our own mums or partners or whatever. What are you doing going around knocking on doors in the middle of the night, in the rain, and there's not even a basic salary. It's all commission based. And they're trying teach us on how to overcome those negatives. And they would use examples like, just tell them, look, you're an entrepreneur. Right? So somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? Like if you were out on a date or something, right? They won't say, what do you do for a living? Don't say you're a door-to-door salesman. Just say, I'm in marketing. Yeah. What do you mean marketing? Oh, direct marketing. Oh, what kind of direct marketing? Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. What does that actually, these are a lot of these terms I think have been overanalyzed, and some of them have been used willy-nilly for people to sound good about themselves. People like, those subscription services, like, the makeup brand, what was it called again? I can't remember the makeup brand. There's brands that people used to sell for commission. Yeah. They have a catalogue of products.
Avon Cosmetics. Yeah.
I've known people like similar, such like the Avon brand or other brands. They'll be selling stuff. That's all they're doing, or that utility company.
Yeah, utility.
AN is there an N something?
Yeah.
You know which one I'm on about, right?
Mean, yeah.
And their title on social media is I'm an entrepreneur. Why? Because there's no basic salary. They're commission only. Sell a product, make your money.
Okay.
Bam.
Okay. So So we think entrepreneurs. I mean, we're trying to get to a collective here of thoughts there. So we think entrepreneur.
Don't think you're gonna get that tonight.
Yeah, we may get. We may do. So we think entrepreneur. The word is slightly misrepresenting in terms of what that is. So if you think about business and being a business owner and being an entrepreneur, some people say I'm a business owner. Some people might say I'm an entrepreneur. If somebody came to you and said my card, and then they use the title CEO of XYZ company. What's your natural sort of thoughts if somebody describes themselves
as a CEO? CEO used to mean you're the CEO of a FTSE 100 company. You've got hundreds or thousands of people working for you. Now you've got companies with one employee and the owners calling themselves a CEO. So I think
is it technically incorrect though? If they're not a limited company and they're a sole trader business, they can't call themselves a director technically.
Ajmal, do you call yourself a CEO?
I am the CEO.
You're the CEO of Boss, yeah. But you're comfortable with that title?
I'm comfortable now, but what I don't call myself, what I always called myself was a business owner. I've never called myself entrepreneur. I've just been uncomfortable with that term. Yeah, I have been an entrepreneur for the last 15, 16 years.
So you're okay with somebody else says you're an entrepreneur, but you wouldn't call yourself an entrepreneur?
I don't like that term. I don't like that term.
At all?
No.
It's a bit like calling yourself an expert in something. Yeah. I'm okay with somebody else calling me, claiming that I'm an expert or addressing me as an expert in something, but I'm not comfortable with calling myself an expert. You know, because for me, an expert is somebody who has reached the pinnacle of that field.
But would you say you've got expertise?
Yes.
In certain areas?
Because I think expertise is not the whole thing of the whole discipline. There are certain elements which you might excel at than others, and you are grown up to understand that you may not excel in some matters which others will. You see, so it's a emotionally intelligent way of looking at the things in a holistic way and understanding. You know what? We're not all perfect. We've all got learning to do. The moment you stop learning, you're done for.
Okay. So what's the transition for yourself in terms of the title CEO? What's been that change where you've said, yeah, I'm comfortable with the title CEO now?
Because when I started Boss Pizza, the aim was to build it into a national company. So that is it. So the first thing I've done, so at this moment we're tiny, but my management team, I've got like 7 people in the management team. So we've laid a very strong foundation, and I've got heads of each department in place. So I am, if you look at the top of my organisation, yes, I am a CEO. Underneath, we've still to build out the branch network, but that is the foundation is being laid for that. So effectively, I did jump the gun a little bit, but because I knew the roadmap, I knew the exact plan of what we're going to achieve.
And you're setting the scene in terms of this is the framework that we're working towards. So therefore, I'm comfortable with the title CEO.
Yeah.
But normally, you would sort of guide people against that, particularly if they're a lifestyle business or if they're a small enterprise.
In my previous businesses, I had over 100 employees. I never called myself the CEO.
What was your job title there?
Just owner. Owner or director, or it was just something like that, or the boss.
There's another title which is sort of coming up in prevalence, which is a founder. Everybody wants to be the founder or the co-founder.
Yeah.
You know, is there anything wrong with that?
I quite like that.
Yeah. I like that.
It's quite humble.
Yeah. It's not as pompous as some of the other titles out there. And also, there's an aspiration attached to that. If you've got some history with the company, then sure, my company's been running for 15 years. I think I'm qualified to say I'm founder by now. Yeah. You say I founded this 15 years ago, right? So if my company was started 15 months ago, yes, I could still call myself a founder, but then it depends on you personally, how you feel, whether you feel and what your perception is. I think what we're discussing now are abstract things where we're looking at perceptions, how are perceptions formed relating to certain words. So for example, we talked about expert. What's the perception, your individual subjective perception of the title expert? It might be different to Ajmal's, it might be different to mine. But we're going into very unique kind of thinking here based on experience, environment, I don't know, a lot of other stuff.
Perception is important. Optics are very important. You know, these are things people look at.
But perception is reality, isn't it?
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about in terms of the structure of an organization. So if there's a structure there, there's a management team, like you've suggested, Ajmal, and you've got a sort of a roadmap, a blueprint in terms of this is what we've done, this has worked. We've got a roadmap here, we've got a vision here. We're going to dominate this market. This is where we are. This is the growth plan. This time next year, we're going to be in every single city. We're going to do this. You've got a vision there. Now then, you're putting that plan in. How different is that from somebody who has got the roadmap, but not necessarily has got the roadmap, but has got the vision, but not necessarily the roadmap and the structure, but they've got an idea of this is where I am. Because that's the majority of people, I would suggest.
I can only speak from experience. When I started my first business, I had no idea, and the reason I've got such a clear vision now is purely based on my experience. I've had 10 years corporate experience. I've had 15, 16 years running my own business. So that's like a quarter of a century of business experience. And that has enabled me to develop the skills that allows me to build out that roadmap and build out that framework to try and achieve that success.
Okay.
But when I started my first business, it was just trial and error. You just try things, and if they work, they work. If they don't, you try something else.
I want to ask you this question because I was on a panel and somebody asked I thought a very good question. Somebody had exited a business which was about 10 years ago. So they had this business for 10 years and they exited about 4 years back. And they said exactly what you've just said, tried and tested, I've done it, been there, won the T-shirt, it's worked. And now I'm going to do it again in this market. The young lady in this panel basically said, that's all fine, but the world has changed. The world has changed. We're dealing with different things now. TikTok we spoke about. We talked about social media. Not everything is adaptable. Not everything sort of applies. So just your thoughts in terms of your ability. It's your ability to react and adapt.
Yep.
That's the difference there.
The fundamentals of business remain the same. And let me drill down into detail. You mentioned TikTok. Prior to TikTok, it was newspapers. It's not the fact that we're good at writing press releases, it's the fact that we're good at generating stories and generating content. And the vehicle we apply it to was newspapers yesterday. Today, that's TikTok. So over here, we're still good at creating the content. And then all we have to do is apply it to the media vehicle of the day, which is today, TikTok. We load up the TikTok van and send the message out to the world. Tomorrow, it might be AI or mind control or telepathy. We don't know, but we'll be okay at that because over here, we're still good at creating the content, creating the stories, and then we just will apply it to the medium of tomorrow and ship it out to the world to get our message out there.
Okay. So social media, some of them, as I said, blow up and others, go out of favor. There is rumors about TikTok, and I'll talk specifically about TikTok probably potentially being banned. You must have come across these stories.
Okay, it's in the US.
Yeah, in the US. Yeah. So potentially, if it goes anywhere else and so forth, again, you're talking about global brands and so forth. But you're right; they're not necessarily in our control. Yeah, we've had here in this room have had experience where we've known somebody who may have been banned on certain social media sites as well. So they're not necessarily all in our control. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about in terms of actually, reliance on these tools.
Yep.
We'll call them tools, and potentially some of the risks of putting all your efforts in that one basket.
Yeah, I think that is a risk, but if you over here have got a good media machinery, you're good at talking to camera, you're good at creating content, you're good at editing, you're good at pumping out hundreds of videos a month, if TikTok gets banned, it's not the end of the world. We'll just flip to YouTube Shorts, we'll flip to Facebook Reels, Facebook, we'll just flip to other channels. But the key thing is, you need to focus on the content creation and then apply it to the media of the day. And media channels, TikTok, Reels, Facebook, they'll come and go. And there'll be a time in a few years' time where it's something else. But as long as you're over here, you're creating the content, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Ajmal, it's about communication. It's about getting the message across. Yep. And you said right at the beginning the fact that I've never sold in terms of our franchise model. Yes, we've got a banner at the on our videos, but I've never sold. So what is it that you're selling? Are you selling yourself? Are you selling ideas? Are you selling thoughts? What's the communication that you're doing? What is it that you're doing?
So all I'm doing on social media is adding value to the audience. There are too many, I think fraudsters is too strong a word. There's too many
Charlatans, we say.
charlatans. They're on social media. They're pretending to be very big. They're driving the Lamborghinis. They're living in Dubai. They're selling the courses. They're selling the books, whatever it is. And I know I can see right through that because I've been in business. I've got the battle scars. 80% of my content is bloody negative. Don't do it. It's too hard. You're going to mess up this. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so big on TikTok. When I say so big, like
you're focused on. You're all in on TikTok.
Yeah, all in on TikTok. I just want to get the message out there. Business is fantastic. It's not as easy as everyone else is making it out to be.
Okay.
Everyone in social media is earning £10,000 a month apart from me.
So you're about giving value.
Yeah.
Which is your thoughts, your viewpoints, your knowledge, your wisdom that you've gathered over those years, and your opinions.
Yeah. And I am a business geek, right? We're filming this for 1.5 hours. I tell you now, Safaraz, I could sit here for 12.5 hours, 20.5 hours, 24 hours. I could sit here talking about business.
Okay. That's interesting.
We've got the camera He's got to leave it at that.
That's interesting. So I did say originally at the beginning, there's no hard stop here. But I might have to just say, okay, that's it. That's
the cameraman's just fainted.
So, okay, we're having, I think, a wonderful, compelling conversation about business and so forth. And I started about talking about really the macro perspective. And, you talked about a little bit about doom and gloom, and you talked about some opportunities. And you've also then, one of the takeaways is, do your thing, whether it's small, whether it's big, whatever the case is, do your thing, understand yourself a little bit in terms of your own level of what you are and so forth. And there's opportunities there. So in terms of some of the doom and gloom and so forth, how do we put ourselves in a position where we can be, we're steadfast, we're a bit more solid?
Go for it.
Some of the foundations.
It's not for the light-hearted. I think one of the first things to understand is being in business isn't for everybody.
No.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with going to have a job, being paid a salary, come home, do your thing. You know what you're getting at the end of the month, and just work on that. That's the first thing. But starting a business can be in phases. It can be a part-time thing while somebody's working, or something that somebody just throws themselves into if they've got the capital to support themselves. But there's no one answer to this. It's going to very much depend on the individual. It'll depend on your support network. It'll depend on how well you've researched the market in which you're wanting to enter. It'll depend on how much faith you have in yourself. Depend on how much faith you have in your product or service. There's so many variables out there. But if you've got to a stage where you believe wholeheartedly, this is it, there's no way this can fail, and this is going to eventually get there. It might take time, but one of the biggest failures is giving up. And this goes in things like investments as well. You talk to people who had crypto. I don't know whether we're going to touch on crypto or not. I took all my money out last week. But the only people who lose are the ones who cash in, right?
Okay.
But I cashed in for another reason. Not that I needed the money, but it was something to do with the platform. But here's the thing: most people will fail with a credible business idea because they gave up that little bit too early. You've seen that analogy when somebody's chopping away through the mountain, digging for the gold, and he's gone through so many problems and so many troubles. He goes towards the middle and he gives up, and he was just 1 inch away from the gold at the end of that tunnel. But there's going to be a multitude of things which will affect people's motivation, people's strength to continue. It could be that they've run out of capital and money to support their families. There's so many things to discuss here. But I think one of the main things is if you have that USP. No, just joking. If you have that idea, just don't give up on it. Keep it going, even on a smaller level, but just don't give up on it.
Ajmal, any thoughts in terms of staying relevant?
no matter what endeavor you do, whether it's business, it's sport, no matter what endeavor you do, the minute you start to do well, you're going to be bombarded with negativity and criticism. And the one thing you must do is just grow a thick skin, soldier on, and ignore all the haters. And I can guarantee you one thing, and I've experienced this as well. The minute you start a business, everyone's cheering for you. The minute you start to do well, less people cheer. And the minute you start to do very well, the people that were cheering for you turn against you. And the saddest thing is, a lot of the hate comes from within your circles.
Within your friends and family.
Yep.
Saf, you chuckled at that one. I think you can relate by the sounds of it.
Okay, let's talk about support, peer support, and okay. So, I often phone you up, Majid, and say, I'm feeling a little bit down on this. This is what it is, and we sometimes get consumed, and perception and is probably a little bit out of line, and our perspective is slightly different, and so forth. So, how do we get that support structure, even if it's not within the original, the close friends and family?
I'm gonna flip that back to you, Safaraz. You've just mentioned something very interesting there.
Yeah.
As us business owners, there is this a persona that we've got to sort of maintain, that we know what we're doing. And for us to admit, you know what, I'm having a really bad week. Things have really gone to shit. And we can't just turn up and start telling the world that. And what you said is something very important. So what did you phone? So you phoned Majid and said...
I've phoned Majid a number of times to say the fact that I'm not sure if I can do this anymore. Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm the right person. I'm not sure if this is working out for me.
Yeah.
I open up, vulnerability to a certain level.
To how many people? Just Majid, or to
a
number?
I find it hard to talk to that many people.
Yeah.
And I connected with your good self, and so I'm very comfortable with you. And I've said this to you before, that I can openly talk to Majid, because he's close enough, but I don't. We go our different ways a little bit as well, and I feel that I can talk to him because, I'm not with him all the time. Yeah, and he's not going to be judging me as well, and he can give me what I would say wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah, and a sounding board.
But not, I can't talk to everybody.
Yeah.
So, for example, again, he's probably listening to this, but I wouldn't be able to talk to my business partner on this. I wouldn't be able to talk to my management team on this. I wouldn't be able to talk to somebody else that I talk to who's a sort of in our same field, but I see him as a competitor. But we're friends. You know, you can have frenemies if you want to, or, so forth. So there's certain people you couldn't talk to. An
extension of that point is entrepreneurship at the top of any organisation is very, very lonely, and we can't just turn around to our team and our colleagues and just sort of share what's in our hearts. Because a lot of times it's vulnerable, it's negative, and these people are looking up to you. And if you turn around to them and say, "Well, I'm really struggling," in whatever capacity, it's quite an uncomfortable place to be.
Taken advantage of.
Is there coping techniques or coping mechanisms? Because we all need that a little bit. Would you say?
One of the ways that I combat that is, let's be clear, entrepreneurship is bloody lonely, right? One of the ways I combat that is I always have one person that I can speak to at this moment. I've got another business owner in a completely different sector, and I can open up about issues that I've got, and they open up about issues that they've got. But we wouldn't have those conversations, exactly like yourself. We would not have those conversations with anyone else. So I think a coping mechanism is find a trusted partner, we'll call it, that you can use each other as a sounding board. That's a great help.
And give you a bit of challenge, maybe some support, give you the right level of perspective and so forth. Yeah. So if somebody doesn't have that in their mechanisms, and they, sometimes people go to mastermind classes and they go to networking events and so forth, or you talk about mentors, finding a mentor. How would you get that sounding board? How would you do that?
It's hard.
Imagine we're both looking at you at the moment.
For your words of wisdom. If you're looking for anyone, the man's here. He's got a big shoulder to cry on.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying.
It's hard. In my whole business life, I've only met two people that I feel I could trust enough to open up.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
It's about trust, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's
yeah.
about trust, but it's more than trust because they've got to have some competence. They've got to have some capabilities. Yeah, you could trust them.
Yeah.
We trust certain people. I can trust my brother, but he might not have necessarily the right sort of skill sets, the techniques
exactly.
to actually put it in perspective. I can talk to him for an hour,
Yeah.
but he wouldn't understand it.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be able to relate to it. And there's only certain people that would be able to have that wisdom, the knowledge,
Yeah.
the experience, the right level of sort of articulation and talk to you.
Yeah.
So it's quite difficult, I think,
Yeah.
finding that
There's
person.
also sometimes, because we mentioned social media, until you find that person,
Yeah.